Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, rather. Welcome to today's webinar about solving the challenges of staffing and retention. Look, transport and logistics, we acknowledge that this is a huge challenge. It has been for many years. Average age of a driver in New Zealand, last I heard, was 54. And they say that over 20% of our workforce will be retiring in the next 10 years, with both aging drivers, operators, schedulers, the whole remit of staff in our industry. So being able to have a great team that you have hired and are able to hold on to is really critical to the success of your business. And we're going to talk about why, and we're going to talk about some strategies for how to improve. Before we get into the content, I'd like to introduce you to today's special guest, my colleague, Kaylee Whittings, who works with us in Success Formula. Kaylee, do you want to say hi?
Hi, welcome along. I'm glad to kind of get an opportunity to talk about this because it's really important and we think we've got it under wraps, and it's good to just keep getting new ideas and fresh kind of opportunities to talk about it.
Thanks, Kaylee. Yeah, and to that point today, we're going to talk a little bit about what the processes of attracting people and retaining them in your business is. But we're also going to spend probably the majority of our time talking about some of the ideas and tactics that we have worked with our clients on that have been really successful for doing this in transport and logistics specifically. So look, first thing right off the bat is, I guess, a bit of a definition. What are we actually talking about? So this is the what. What does attracting actually and retaining actually mean? Kaylee, do you want to have a crack? What does it mean to you? You've worked in this industry for a long time as well.
Yeah, so attracting really is about kind of finding and interviewing that person or getting that person on board before they secure the job for you. So how do you get them in the door, even putting their job application in with you?
So way more than just the paperwork processes of filling in forms and things. It's the whole thing about attracting them to your business and making them want to be part of it, and then choosing the right person. Yeah. And then retaining. What is that about?
Retaining is kind of the big meaty part. That's when you've got them in the door and they've signed all their paperwork. Actually, how do you keep them in the business? So, creating structure and policies, things like procedures to keep the employees engaged and working and loving what they're doing. So it's the kind of, you pull them in to then keep them in the business essentially.
I love that. It's the loving what they do, because you don't just want people to survive and take a paycheck and show up. You want them to thrive. You want them, because that's good for them, but it's really good for your business that they're engaged and motivated and and loving life and being and part of something that's great, not just dragging their heels and because the people who are loving it are putting in more effort, right?
Yeah, I read a really interesting, I was reading a book the other day and it was saying good people are punished for good work much more than bad people are punished for bad work. And I thought that was a pretty interesting.
Sadly true too, I feel. We at Success Formula, many of you know, we run the Traction program, which is about getting insights in a business from staff, from management, from everyone around how things are going, what they're doing well and what they could be doing better. And through the surveys that we've run over the years, I just pulled out a few of the most recent comments that relate to this attracting and retaining issue, because it is something we hear massive number of times from the people that are participating. Sometimes it can be intimidating, as you don't want to rock the boat or be viewed as problematic by asking. So where people don't feel safe to speak up, or that that they have a voice, it's certainly a workplace that they don't tend to stay. Someone else commenting about the attracting process. We actually need to tell new job seekers if their application has not been successful. So the experience that people have when they're coming to try to work with you is really important. They're going to tell their friends, and this was actually a comment from someone who worked in the business, so it's impacting on the people that are there as well. This was an interesting one. I don't believe full and proper checks are done on all new employees, and wrong appointments are made because the managers are in a hurry to fill the roles. Unfortunately, that is a reality when you've got a really tight labour market and a shortage of skilled labour, particularly. We are in some instances a bit desperate to fill jobs. But what I found interesting about the comment was, this is not just about the person that you hire. This is about the impact that that person has on everybody else in your team, the morale in your team. The comment goes on to say, this appointment has caused a lot of dissension and it's not someone I'd feel comfortable working with. So that's really a little bit of a worry to say, is it worth it to your business to just take anyone, or would you be better to actually leave that role gap to find the right person? That's a challenging balance, I acknowledge. And then the last one I picked out was management are often heard speaking disparagingly of staff, and we're not encouraged to be proud of the company. We're not told what the values and mission statement are, if there even is any. And I found that interesting when it goes to retention, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, about what makes people stay, what makes them feel part of it, what motivates different people, and how that comment was from a driver. And, it's not often that I think managers even consider that drivers want to hear about what's the mission, the vision, what are we here for, what are we trying to do, like what's the big picture. What they forget, and they tend to get a lot in the weeds. So I thought that was really interesting. So if we just move on then to the why. Why is this really super, super important? Hayley, I know that you worked in recruiting in the UK. And when I talk about why, attracting to me is getting more people into a bucket, right? It's just trying to fill your bucket to have a great team working for your business. Retention is about plugging the holes. There is no point in constant recruiting and hiring new people and whatever, if all the good ones or all the people are just kind of flowing out the holes. What we do say that on average, it takes new employees a long time to be productive. What are some of the other reasons, or why do you think it's important that businesses get this right? Whether that's business reasons or or morale, or what do you think the answers might be?
I think the big one is just kind of thinking about the fact that the industry really relies on skilled and experienced drivers to ensure that there's safe and efficient transportation of goods around the country, and it has to be the top priority, because if there's no staff, then there's no ability to do the job. So it needs to kind of be, what's that big picture? What are we really trying to achieve, rather than just sticking plasters on your bucket, or the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff? What's the big picture? What's the big strategic kind of focus? And I think it's essential to get it right, because it impacts the quality of service that is provided to clients and the overall efficiency of the kind of logistics network. And without it, you struggle to meet those customers' demands. You've got all these increased costs, because you've got things like more recruitment, more training, and if there's any disruptions within operations, then you don't have skilled people to be able to manage that. I think that's a really big part of it, of why it's important to get it right. And I guess on the other side of the retaining staff, that high turnover rates, because of, say, long hours or time away from home or the physical demands of the job, you have to create that positive work culture, because otherwise, there's somewhere else that will happily go and take those amazing humans that you've wanted to hire.
Yeah, absolutely. Your point about when employees leave, the knowledge going with them, that impacts not just obviously the business. Your point was impacting the staff that are left behind and trying to pick up the slack. And we've seen huge amounts of stress and fatigue, particularly through COVID, when we did have, the borders closed and we didn't have that tap of new migrant workers. But from an insurance perspective, conversations we've been having as part of our NZI Fleet Fit partnership, the insurers at the moment are particularly concerned about the borders now being reopened, and we're having a number of new to New Zealand workers coming in. And what is this significant number of inductions and new staff going to do to safety, where you don't necessarily have knowledge and experience in the business, where they haven't definitely, where the training is fresh and new, and even more so to people that are new to the country. What does that mean to the safety? What does that mean to following processes and procedures? And it probably means a bit of a dilution of the culture, and something that you're really going to have to build up again over time. I was thinking when you said about worth investing, gosh, when you look at the profit and loss sheet of a transport business, they spend so much money on tires and servicing and new vehicles and fuel. How much do we actually spend on the thing that is critical? And without it, those trucks aren't moving, so just a bit of an investment.
Yeah, I think I spent a lot of time with customers explaining, the same way you have a through life cost for a vehicle, you have a through life cost for your staff. And that's not just the salary you pay them, but you need to keep them maintained, like train them more, update them on new skills. You need to be able to invest in all of those things. And if you're not putting money aside to invest in those things, someone else is likely to have that money put aside to invest in them.
I was with a client last week who was talking about, it was just extraordinary language. He had such a great culture, but he was talking about when they hire new staff, that is someone that they choose to work in their team. And he wasn't even doing it on purpose. That was just his language he was using. But I was thinking, man, that the fact they choose them, they invest in them, they're part, that they're part of the journey, but also that they don't get all hit up if that person decides that it's time for them to go. This is a great place to work. We acknowledge you may not be here forever, but we want you to have the best time, and we want you to contribute the most. One of the other phrases he used is, there's 100 people here and we all eat from this table. So we're a team. We've got to make it a success for everyone. It's got to be great for you. And he talked about how many people have left for various different reasons that have come back, because that great culture attracts them back, which is
so
cool.
important. Like, actually, I worked with lots of businesses over COVID who had to let people go because of the nature of business. But if you can have that welcoming open arms when people want to come back, not a blame culture, not a like, oh, look at you with your tail between your legs, then actually, like, I quite often recommend to people, when people leave, check in on them, like give them a call after their first month, and just, the intention is not to win them back. The intention is just to check on them like a good human would. And the more you can continue that relationship outside of the work setting, the more that relationship will be stronger, so that they see you as an asset in their corner if they want to come back into the industry, or they want to come back into that role, or if things don't work out in their current job. Lots of us jump because we think that the grass looks greener, and actually we get there and we're like, oh no, they've painted the grass and now I'm stuck here. Like, if you not actually kept that relationship with that person now feels really trapped and stuck, and you might be willing to open them back, and that opportunity might be lost.
Absolutely, leaving the door open. Look, so some of the I'll just rattle through some of the challenges. I think we all know what these are in transport and logistics right now. Competition in the job market is tight. There is a shortage of skilled people that hopefully will ease with the reopening of the borders, but it's going to take some time. One of the big issues in transport and logistics is we not just trying to attract people to come and work for our business, we're also trying to attract them to work for our industry. So there's, to some degree, a lot of transport businesses just trying to work on that problem as well as just getting people through their own door. Whether that's, initiatives like local team sponsorship, or working with schools, or trying to make themselves attractive and put their best foot forward in terms of what working for their business looks like out to their community. So the aging population, as I said, is a challenge, even more so in transport and logistics. We do have a lot of older people working in the industry who will start to head towards retirement, and we need to be getting a significant amount of younger people through the door, or people who are onto a second career, and may have done something else first and find transport and logistics and any of the different exciting jobs that we've got attractive. Some of the other challenges are trying to stand out from the crowd. Particularly, we talk about competing with tradies for work. And again, that comes back to just putting our own best foot forward. Some of the others, come from our traction feedback really about the type of experience people have when going for jobs, whether that's disorganized interviewing process, a lack of job description, a lack of employment contracts, no clarity around paying conditions, or when they show up, the paying conditions is different to what they were promised, or what they feel it's not fair, or it wasn't clearly explained to them. And in addition to that, from a psychosocial harm perspective, transport and logistics has some other challenges like isolated work, shift work, highly sedimentary roles in some instances, highly physical roles in some instances. So, it can be a fairly challenging, it's not for everyone, for sure. I have absolute respect for drivers, for example. I couldn't sit still and stay awake long enough to drive myself to Hamilton. I have to have a break, so not the job for me. But also the technical skills with the amount of technology that's involved in the industry these days, and the precision skills required for driving is extraordinary. So yeah, lots of challenges in that space, but I think we already know that, so let's not spend too much time. In the last 12 months, Kaylee, we've been running these virtual workshops, trying to get people involved a little bit in some of the solutions. So talking about what the best practices are for attracting staff, inducting staff, and retaining staff. Just before I start to run through some of those points, I mean, you've run quite a number. How do you feel those are received, and what are you hearing from the people that are taking part?
Yeah, I think they've been really awesome in terms of getting people in the room to actually stop and have the discussion. I feel like there's a lot of companies and a lot of people who just keep hitting the nail on the head because that's what they've always done, and there's no real opportunity to stop and go, actually, do we still need to be hitting that now, or how could we change that, or like, have we thought about how we attract people, have we thought about how we put out our post ads, like, or job ads, or how we contact our further clients, and getting the right people in the room to prioritize it. We put a lot of responsibility on, say, HR teams, or the lady who works in accounts, because she's the only one that knows the log on. Like, actually, are we being strategic about it? Are we getting the right voices in the room to make that particular decision? I think it's a really big part of actually kind of making logical plans around attracting staff. And I think, one of the things that has come out quite a lot in the 2022 workshops was having this understanding that the new generation of people coming through don't just want a job. They want to have a reason, they want to have a purpose, they want to have an understanding of the value that they contribute. And so you have to think about, what is your company doing to do that? How are they promoting it? How are they advertising it? How are they putting that in their job ads? Like, kind of highlighting the importance of, say, that drivers keep the economy moving, or that there's a sense of pride associated with that profession, is really effective in getting people to understand you're not just a truck driver, you're part of something bigger and more important. And I think in terms of the retention side, one of the things that I saw quite a lot is helping people understand that providing support systems goes past having a beer on the Friday, like having regular communication channels, mentoring programs, recognition initiatives. They can go a really long way in improving staff retention, past, well, we have a barbecue once a week, Kaylee. Thinking about, actually, not everyone eats meat, not everyone drinks beer. How can we recognize the value that people have, and appreciate that diversity in the room?
Just coming back to your point about the job ads, that was something that we've been covering in these workshops. I knew, and before we went into each of them, we were researching the job ads for the company that we were talking to, because often it was national teams and they were all kind of coming together to have the conversation. Wasn't it interesting how variable the ads in transport and logistics are? Like, some of them, it was nigh on impossible to find these companies, or they didn't stand out, or some they didn't really give much information, and then others were like, wow, we're amazing, we're so great. And you thought, well, I know who I'd be wanting to go work for.
Yeah, I think there's there is something to be said for a templated job ad. That does save time and efficiency, yes, but does it inspire anyone when there's 17 templated job ads that literally the title has just changed? No. You need to think about, who are you talking? You're talking to a human. You're not like, you're not going to try and tick boxes. If you want to tick boxes, you will get tick box employees. How are you talking to the real person? How are you getting them involved?
And that goes to the job ads, but it also goes to the experience they have when they're coming on board, right? They've applied. If they have applied, have you responded to say, hey, thanks, we've got your application, we're looking forward to taking a look. What's their experience as they go through that process? And if in this instance they're not successful, that's still really important. What's their experience like, that they might come back and reapply when either they've got more experience or they're better qualified for what you're looking for, or just maybe you had enough applicants this time around and next time they may be successful. So making sure that they have that good experience and they feel like a human, not a number, that you've actually treated them with respect. But one of the other things, just coming to that human aspect, I know we talked a lot about was the brand of your business, which you can see in the job ad and you can see in the experience. But we all know that a lot of New Zealand, especially transport, is word of mouth. And it's what you hear from others, right? It's about, my friend works there and they love it and they would highly recommend it to everybody else. That's really, really critical.
That brand part was a really big part of a few aha moments in the workshops, of people going, oh, I didn't really think that my brand had anything to do with recruiting people. But when you start going, but would you be attracted to that particular, like, what is it about that brand? What is your brand? And you tell me what that brand is. If you're the CE and you can't tell me what your brand is, how are you selling it to someone else? It's the elevator pitch that you're giving to your clients, you should be giving to your staff as well. Like, they should understand, the amazing work that you do. And your people that come to work for you are basically your best customers. They love you so much that they want to work for you. So making sure that you understand that brand and that the value of your organization and what you do means that you can communicate that with other people. You're on mute, Kelly.
Some of the awesome examples we heard of that in transport was things like uniform, like logoed polo shirts with your name on them, or the fact that when you came into the office, everyone said hello. So it doesn't have to be super complicated, tricky stuff. It can be, straightforward, but it's just about making people feel welcome, making sure that it's a friendly place to be, that you're respectful, all of those good common sense kind of things. One of the other things that you mentioned was about the younger generation coming into the workforce. And I know that this is challenging for some of our older operators who they feel like this generation has it easy, or, they have different expectations. And it's true. I think they do have different expectations. We talked about some examples of this with maybe thinking about your paying conditions. So I can tell a story of a client that I worked with who was having problems with absenteeism. They had 6.5 day contracts, and they were like, that's it. Everyone gets 6.5 day contract. That's the work hours. If you want a job here, that's what you do. And they were having real issues with their Saturdays and Sundays and people not showing up. And so we said to them, well, hey, maybe not everyone wants a 6.5 day. Like, maybe you could do some job sharing, where one's 3 days, one's 4 days, or maybe there's some different ways that you could approach this so that they were happy and you've got enough staff that you need to do your job. And I remember the person going, absolutely not. 6.5 work day, 6.5 days a week. That's it. That's our contracts. It's like, wow, in this day and age, and especially since the Great Resignation, and people are motivated by work-life balance. Just because 70-hour weeks was a thing, still is a thing actually for a lot of drivers, doesn't mean that that's what people are looking for today, right?
Yeah, I think work-life balance is like maintaining that work-life balance, or healthy work-life balance, is a real significant concern for employees in the trucking and transport industry. Like, long hours on the road, time away from family and friends can really lead to things like stress and burnout. And potentially we didn't talk about that, 10, 15, 20 years ago, when you got into business. But actually, it's not that it's not important. Employers are increasingly recognizing the importance of addressing that well-being or that work-life balance, and implementing policies to ensure that they can support that well-being. So my recommendation is, if you don't do it, other people are doing it. So you're gonna, in that 6.5 day work week, people are just going to go somewhere else because they've got flexible hours. Oh, I can work 3 days, I can job share, I can do mornings so I can do my kid pickups. Like, if you're excluding people, like, fine, exclude people from the job pool. If there's lots of people looking for jobs, there's not lots of people looking for jobs. How can you bring people in? How can you make it more inclusive? How can you bring people back into the workforce who are amazing people but maybe have kids at home, or nearing retirement age, so they only want a couple of days a week. How do we bring people in and inspire them to stay?
And I know some transport operators are struggling with how to implement that flexibility alongside a job that still needs to get done. And some of the techniques I've been hearing about are things like the use of changeovers. So rather than one long line haul run, you might have a midpoint and you have a driver at each end so that they go home at the end of the day. Or as said, job sharing so that they have less, maybe more hours over 3 days, but less days, or whatever it might be. There are some solutions that are working in transport. It just takes being open-minded and thinking about, okay, well, what do I really need to get this done? And how do I make it a win-win so there's a benefit for that person and a benefit for us who operationally needs to get the job done? So talking about plugging the holes in the bucket and retention, just conscious of time. We gave lots of ideas in the workshops that we ran, and we got some fantastic feedback from industry about other things that are working, but I just wanted to skim through a couple of those points just quickly. The first is the importance of having a review process or getting feedback from your team. When someone decides that they're going to resign or doesn't show up the next day, chances are that decision was actually made a long way beforehand. So whether that's one-on-one chats with your drivers or other staff, whether that's some kind of formal review process, whether that's making space at team meetings or toolbox talks or in the lunchroom or walking the yard at the start or end of a shift, whatever it might be to increase that feedback and check-in points, that's your best way of finding out where there are issues and getting people on board with saying, hey, what can we do? What are your ideas? What do you think we can improve? Let's be practical. Let's work together to make this awesome for everybody. Second one that we went through was just the importance of learning and development. And particularly with newer generations coming through, they're telling us this is more and more important. They want to be able to learn new stuff. That doesn't mean everybody has to get promoted, but it does mean most of us want to get value out of our job. We want to feel that we're contributing. We want to know what's the big picture, where how many kilometers did this company travel this week, or how much freight did we move, or potentially moving in different parts of your business. If you've got an opportunity, for some people like metro, some people like line haul, some people want to do port work where they learn different skills. And first of all, get to know your staff, understand what it is that they're looking for, and then look for opportunities within your business that people can get variety and development opportunities. We talked about culture and making a nice environment. One of the issues in transport was particularly through COVID, where bathrooms on the highway were shut, is just that access to facilities. So where people have got access to a shower or access to a smoker room where they can heat something up in a microwave, or clean toilets and bathrooms. Doesn't sound like a lot, but unfortunately some of these basics we're seeing in transport just aren't there. So as best you can, providing those facilities, negotiating with maybe customers for access to those facilities in customer locations, whatever you can do to provide that nice working environment goes a long way to making people feel valued. But funny story about an operator I went to, a different operator last week, who said to me that because he had been a driver, he understood that the cab is the driver's working environment. So if the speaker on his radio is all crackly, the workshop's going to go, yeah, is it important to safety? Is it important to operations? No, very low priority to fix said speaker. And this depot manager said in his depot, they would fix that as a priority, because they understood that no one wants to be sitting for however many hours a day listening to instead of a nice music or podcast or whatever that they was listening to. And I was super impressed, that understanding of what are the things that make people feel valued, what are the things that make people feel heard, and then how do you do that in a practical way that balances operational needs and requirements, etc. So yeah, just thinking, I think retention is thinking through what's important to people, thinking through those employee benefits, and some of the creative ways that companies are trying to tackle this at the moment is gym memberships, negotiating discounted rates for health insurance, looking at on-site gyms, real kind of variety of health and wellbeing benefits. But one operator said to me, it's really annoying, Kelly, because not everyone wants the same thing. Like, that might be because we're humans, and unfortunately we don't all want the same thing. So there is not really a simple, easy, straightforward, one size fits all answer here. It's about getting to know your people, and having the conversation, involving them, being practical, etc. Did you want to add anything into that Kaylee?
I think I guess the kind of, to sum up or to kind of give additional to that, is that like what we prioritize what gets done. So if you prioritize retaining and attracting good people, you'll retain and attract good people. If you prioritize the workspace, the work environment as the truck cab, then you'll prioritize that, and that'll be great for you. So think about what you're prioritizing. Are you prioritizing efficiencies with operations? Is that to the detriment of something else? And I think, understanding those priorities is a really big part. But I guess my biggest recommendation for any company is to help people see that pipeline of progression, because there are probably, 5, maybe 10% of your team who want to do the same thing every single day. And that's cool. But actually, like, majority of a team seek variety, they seek progression, they seek diversity, and you need to keep those people engaged and interested and passionate about their own self-development. So you need to help them see those opportunities, whether that's creating journey maps through the progression, what are their tickets, what are their sign-offs, helping them see the next step and what they need to do to get there. And that should always be accompanied by remuneration steps and incentives, so that people understand, well, if I want more pay, I need to go to here. Help them make that decision, help them be self-motivated, rather than, like them getting to the end of their career and being like, oh, I really wish I could do line haul, but I never got the opportunity to. Exit interview is too late. If you're getting that information at an exit interview, you've missed the opportunity. They've already checked out, as Kelly said before.
Yeah, 100%. Look, the just conscious of time, we will wrap it up today. Kaylee and I could talk forever, and do spend a huge amount of time with our clients talking about retention as an issue, and particularly how culture can feed into both attracting staff and retaining them. Probably the last point I just wanted to chuck in at the end, which is usually something I do talk about a lot, is the importance of the boss. And that research and data tells us that most people actually leave the boss. They don't necessarily leave the job. And so if you're looking for how to improve that culture in that workplace and how to better support your team, investing in the skills of the leaders and managers in your business is often, I would say, an important first step. Making sure that those people are able to create this experience and make people feel valued as you're intending to, does take a bit of time. It isn't a skill that comes to everybody, and particularly is about building that trust and being consistent. So yeah, final thoughts. there's a huge financial imperative to your business to doing this. It's hurting your bottom line, having staff turnover. It's wasted management time. It's wasted resource that you could be putting and prioritizing into other things. Please, it's when you think about how much you spend on tires and, you know, shiny chrome on the front of trucks, just thinking about how do I take a little bit of that budget and be intentional about hiring good people and keeping the good people, and, you know, making sure that they can thrive in your business is an investment worth making. Awesome. Thanks, Kaylee. Awesome to have you along as a guest. Much appreciated. And yeah, we'll see you again next month. Thanks, team.